Good morning and welcome to the March 25th meeting of the Finance Committee. I call this meeting to order. Reverend Benson and Mr. Price are present. I need a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion to approve agenda.
Second. All those in favor?
Second.
Thank you. Thank you. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
The next item is the approval of the February 23rd minutes.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Thank you very much. Action item is budget and budget amendments and transfers. Ms. McLam.
Yeah, in your packet, you all have our regular amendments and transfers. There were some state adjustments for NCVPS that you see reflected. There is a local amendment, which is not normally what you all might see. That local amendment is related to the nurse bonuses that the county provided. There are some federal adjustments that we received. Some of the federal CARES Act money has come through. We got final approval, so that amendment is included as well. Capital funds, yesterday in facilities, the approval for the purchase of activity buses. So I've budgeted the funds for that. So that's what you see in the capital budget amendment.
That was in SPIT, right? Not facilities.
Oh, I'm sorry. It was.
Okay.
Sorry. It was two meetings yesterday. I got a little
confusing
together.
Have we heard anything more on the newest ESSER and how we can spend that money yet?
We did at the end of last week, we received a copy of the application, so we can start building our needs assessment for that. Summer school was a big portion of that, and the application will not open until April 1st.
Okay.
So preliminary discussions on what those needs are going to be and how we're going to identify them.
Awesome.
I believe we've talked right now, we're looking at maybe including a couple of different stakeholder groups and really making sure that we address all the needs from the district within that application. But it is 17 million is our planning, and we haven't not seen our final yet. I've also amended the after school budget. You will probably see these on a regular basis now that after school is back in session. I did not budget any revenue for them because the program was not in, we were not running the program at the beginning of the year. So I didn't know how to estimate that. So I'm budgeting it as it is received.
Okay, on the second to last one, special funds, what's the contracted services in there?
I've got my screen kind of small. I'm doubled up here. Those are funds that EC receives for Medicaid medical reimbursements. So they are contracting psychological services and other needs that they have in the exceptional children's department.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And then the last page you'll see is the federal transfers. This is about the time of year when federal programs starts making adjustments to already allocated budgets based on the needs of the Title I schools. So the majority of these are Title I. There's a little bit of CT funding here and some of our program we run at South Providence as well. So what you see at the very bottom is related to sales tax refund. It shows as a negative, so we have to move that into an actual budget.
Okay.
The one thing that came through yesterday after I'd already uploaded was the CTE transfer of months. So I will prepare a CTE transfer for the full board, but I wanted to make you all aware in the curriculum committee last week, they presented the need for a server, which was several $100,000, and the funding for that has come through. It's just the timing of everything. So I will prepare that and provide that for the full board's approval so we can move forward with that purchase as it was approved. And that's all the amendments and transfers.
Thank you very much. Does anybody have any more questions? No. Okay. The next item is a potential staff bonuses for fiscal 2021.
So we've had some discussions internally about what we might be able to potentially afford to do for staff this coming, or as we end out the year. I've done some models of two or three different versions just so that I could present to you all the cost to the district. These models that I've done have included every employee in the district, regardless of where they're funded from, including school nutrition, and just wanted to make sure that you all were aware of what the cost might be if we were to provide some of these things.
Okay,
So we went with a $500 across the board flat one-time payment to staff. That cost with benefits would be about $3.3 million. I also modeled out a $750 one-time payment, and that would be approximately $4.9 million. Same thing across the board, including any Social Security and retirement. I also modeled a $1,000 one-time payment, which would be about $6.5 million. Now, within these, I did do flat across the board, but there would be some criteria I'm sure that we would all agree upon based on when someone was employed, if you were full-time or part-time, similar to what we did when we did the bus driver one-time payments in December. So we would model some of the same criteria in doing this. So I did this as what the maximum would be, but just understand that there would be some variations in that based on whatever criteria we do put together.
okay,
Now, there has been some
go ahead.
go ahead.
No, go.
You're going to ask me about money now.
Money,
Funding.
do we have the money?
So there have been some discussions. We've been talking with our county. When in their presentation on Thursday, they mentioned that they have some increased revenues received based on sales tax and some of their projections, and they are looking to partner with us and maybe provide some one-time funds for us to make some of these payments. So I am currently, today is payday, and as of March payroll, I'm running projections on the local side to see what operational efficiencies we have gained over the course of this year and how we can maybe put together something to meet one of these one-time payment criteria.
Okay,
I feel certain that we can do something, but at what level with these models and with what the county can help us with will be determined once I run some of these numbers. Going back 5 days a week will change. So I've got to make sure I account for some of those projections as well. So, and there's some other items that I want to talk to you about today that will also need to be accounted for, but I think there is the potential for us to do something this year.
so do you think that you would have, so we have a board meeting on the 13th, and then I think we're talking about having a board work session the following week. Do you think you would have something for the full board for the work session?
I believe we could put something together for sure by that point, some of the criteria as well as at what level we feel we can support.
So we're going to have a budget work session probably the week after our board meeting, so the week of the 19th. So that would be a good discussion for the board at that time. So
Yes.
if you could have that ready for then, that would be great.
Yeah, because and Dr. Houlihan, I believe with our discussion yesterday, we met with the county staff yesterday. They're looking for us to put together a proposal and then submit to them. So I think that would give us time to pull all that together, make all those recommendations, and then communicate that information over to them.
And I appreciate what the county is offering us. That's a good thing for our employees and for us. So that's great.
Yes.
Thank you.
Shauna, there was also some talk about using some of the state and federal COVID funding. Did we ever get any clarity on that?
We still have not received any information on that. The funding that we were talking about earlier, that's where the application opens April 1st. I don't know that the timing of that is going to hit for this school year, and we're looking at trying to do something right now. So, if there's the opportunity, maybe next school year, or if there's other things that we can address moving into FY22 with those funds, we will definitely take a look at that then. But I
So
just
that's
don't think the
Right.
information's not coming out fast enough for us to make that decision.
So the ESSER funds that that I asked you about earlier, we are not applying for them until April 1st, so we wouldn't be able to get them in enough time and get information. Okay, I get it. Okay, thank you. Any other questions on that? Okay. Next item is the COVID funding update.
Yeah, I prepared a document for our joint meeting, and I really haven't had any new information to add to this. So just so that it was part of our documentation, which I know it was in our board docs, but this was the most recent, and I think pulled everything that we had gotten to date together, which addressed our what they're calling ESSER 1 funds and state relief dollars. So that document pretty well encompasses the first rounds of COVID relief funding. And then I'll begin a document starting to address our ESSER 2 and some of our other additional funds that we haven't received yet. But I think that pretty well closes out or gets us to the point where we've all funds received to date. That would be like almost like a final document.
Okay, and then we'll start with the new stuff. Okay,
Yeah.
great. Okay.
It's
Does anyone
easier.
have any?
It's a lot of information, and trying to keep updating it, it just gets, I don't want to misinform or have some numbers that are incorrect. So I'd rather start with a new one.
I agree. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any questions on that? The next item is charter school payments that you alluded to in our joint meeting with the county.
Yes, as I detailed at the joint meeting, charter school enrollments and our enrollment come together for us to determine a per pupil share for distribution. We pay charter schools on a monthly basis based on an invoice that they submit to us using their enrollment numbers. So when we started the school year, at the beginning of every year, just so you all know, at the beginning of every year, I use our projections and charter school projections. I run calculations based on our current funding or whatever our local appropriations will be, including our fines and forfeitures and ABC revenues, because they're all eligible for that. And I do a per pupil share. We make 9 payments to charter schools over the school year because we wait for first month enrollment before we make a final per pupil calculation. So because our enrollment was projected at a number of 41,974, I used 4,000 enrollment for our charter schools. Our enrollment ended up at really more like almost 40,000, and theirs was 4,025. So that difference in enrollment with the district now increases that per pupil share that's owed for every charter school student. So I've rerun the calculations, and that comes to about $700,000.
$700,000 for 25 students?
No,
Oh,
for the difference in 41,970, the per pupil
okay,
share for
okay.
all students.
Gotcha.
And
Yes.
so our difference in enrollment is
Understand.
really the
Yep.
biggest. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
that's another purpose of evaluating after this payroll where we are. We're going to have to address that most likely again. It will be from some operational efficiencies that we've had this year because we've not necessarily been in school every day, or some of the things that we normally would do, we haven't been doing. So we do have some funds, most likely from maybe a utility budget or somewhere like that in operations that will account for this.
Okay.
Once I identify where that is, it'll come to you as a budget amendment or a budget transfer where I'm transferring those funds to charter school payments. But it's something I feel we need to do before the end of the school year. So that's why I wanted to bring it to you now.
So will next year's budget have an increase to charter school payments?
Yes. If our enrollment, based on our enrollment projections now, and hopefully, again, we're anticipating having an increase in enrollment for those students that maybe did not attend in kindergarten potentially this past year. So I did talk to our person that's over Power School yesterday, and she mentioned that she's seeing a tick up in those enrollments or registrations of students who have never registered for school before. So I feel like we're on an uptick, and that will definitely be something that we see. So hopefully next year there will be an increase, but I don't foresee that it will, hopefully we won't be in the same situation where we're already into the school year, because there's a true up every year. There's always some little difference that I do, but it's
There
never,
is, yeah.
it's usually not this large.
Okay, that sounds great. Anybody have any questions on that? Thank you. Next up is school nutrition. Mrs. Lamar, welcome to our
Yes.
finance committee.
Yes, I've asked Denise Lamar and Mark Strickland to come and speak to us today a little bit about
Awesome.
school nutrition services and where they are. As you all know, they have been impacted as well. In the COVID funding update, you'll see, and we've talked about this numerous times, the effort that they've put in to maintain providing meals to our district and get, what we've done to help assist keeping that school nutrition program running. But again, it's an enterprise account. It runs like a business. So I just kind of wanted, this point in the year is where we really get to where they stand right now. And so I wanted her to provide you all an update.
Thank you. I want to start out by saying, please let your staff know how much we appreciate for everything that they've done starting at March 13th last year. I know that they have been working around the clock to make sure our students are fed. Thank you so much. It's amazing. I don't know what else to say, but let them know that we really appreciate what they've been doing. Yes, yay.
And Miss
Thank you,
Lamar,
and we will.
and Miss Lamar, I want you to know that I'm having breakfast right now.
That's the best way to start your day, is with a great breakfast.
Exactly.
So thank you for letting us come here today. I want to say that where we are today really started a little bit about 15 years ago. And we in child nutrition have talked about the perfect storm and what would be coming. And this sort of was the eye of our storm. But with the Healthy Hungry Free Kids Act and with the prior recession, we started to see things in child nutrition start to change. And for 15 years, we've been working really hard with the school system to be able to maintain ourselves and to make changes to our program so that we could stay financially sound and not have to depend on the school system to help us. But in March 13th and the weeks that followed, everything really started to change. We came to the call and we did what we do best. We love our students and took care of our community. And to date, we've fed about 1.3 million meals out to our community. We came into action. We used those knowledge and skills that we had, and we did learn a new word this year, and that was to be fluid. Because every day it seemed like what our goal was changed or shifted. But the aftermath of all this has been a financial hit to our program. Let's start with March to sort of give you an overview. In March, Union County Public Schools had 29.75% of its students on free and reduced lunch, and we had about 8 CEP schools. That left us, when they told us to go into action and they told us that we would be using the model for summer feeding, that only left us about 15 or so schools that met the criteria to operate underneath that program. So we had to look at where we could locate and who we could serve. Unfortunately, when we first set up, unlike other counties who had greater numbers of free and reduced students, we were limited to sections of our county being able to meet the needs. But we did come in there and start working. We were, out of our 42,000 students, we were really only servicing about 4,000 or so there at the beginning because of this restriction of not being able to service our whole county. By the time waivers came in from the government, it was late April or May. And also by that time, we had 50% of our staff or so go out on pandemic leave. So we had to stay sort of with the model that we had at that moment, and we continued. By summer, we were down to about 75 people who would work for the summer. And we did continue our process, but that all had a toll on us. One of the other things that I want to talk about real quickly that we faced last year that we're going to have to talk about for this year again is The waiver to be able to feed all the kids free that came down only went until the end of August. So we had to make a decision. We waited and we waited patiently saying, come on, they've got to be going to extend this so that kids could eat free all year long. That waiver didn't come by the time we got ready to start school. So knowing where we were on our free and reduced percentage, we decided that we would start with the National School Lunch Program and go back to our original school model. About 3 weeks into it, though, we finally got relief, and the federal government did do the waiver to say that we could feed all students. That changed a little bit of our profile for the county. We were able to open many more sites, reach many more kids. But please know that we didn't act because we were really bound by what the rules of the federal government were to do those things in this county. So that sort of got us set up. And we were able to do fairly okay because we had gone through most of our school year. There were federal funds that came down that were earmarked for child nutrition for that 19-20 year, with Shauna putting about 1.6 million into our program to help cover the salaries. So when we went to look, we did have a loss, but things were not as grim as what I had thought they were going to be. And thank goodness that money came through. And so I can sort of start to show you where we are by talking about our fund balances, which you know is our savings account. At the end of 2019, we had a 2-month operating balance, which meant that if something happened, we could carry ourselves for 2 months and the school system didn't have to worry about where we were. By the end, even though we had that $1.6 million of 2020 and June of 2020, our fund balance had already dropped to 1.48. As of February of 2021, our fund balance is 0.77. So the first time ever, I could not pay a month's worth of bills if we needed to. Please know that at this point, when I'm talking about this fund balance, I still have indirect costs in there because it is something we have to calculate. And I know that Shauna and I've talked about the fact that now that we're below 1, if we stay below 1, that could not be charged to us. But I know that she will do what we have, and she's already told me that we're probably looking at not doing that. But on the other hand, to be able to get us to where we can pay our bills, I already know that that's usually somewhere around $1 million or plus. I know it won't be plus this time, but probably around $1 million this year that the school system will not be getting from us that they're used to having in their budget line. So we know that that is coming already. But I'm worried about the cash flow issue. For the first time, I had to call Shauna and say, hey, how's my checking account looking? Do I have money in there to pay the bills? And we had to look at it and we had to make money. We had to take money out of savings to be able to start to cover the meals. That is including the fact that in this school year, there were some 125 funds that came down that Shauna was able to use to pay 2.5 months of my manager's salaries. But even with that little relief, it wasn't enough. To sort of give it into scope, you know, school nutrition usually has a budget of between 16 and $18 million, and I usually have about 320 employees. For the whole school year, we've been unable to fill about 40 positions. So that means that we've been only paying about 280 employees. The other thing that usually is a big help to my budget is that we have 18 or 20% of our budget coming from our supplemental sales. We were able to add some supplemental sales in, but not in, especially since a large portion of that comes from middle and high school. We were not able to generate those percentages of our budget. Our payroll should run about 40%. This year, our salaries have been running in June of last year with that 1.6 that Shauna gave us, it was at 53%. But by December, even with the money that Shauna used for the 125, our salaries are 92% of our budget. In February, we were down to 85%, but please remember in 2 weeks, we will be doing spring break. That will be a week's pay for all of my staff with no revenue coming in. So I think we're going to be closer up to that 92% again. So when you're supposed to be budgeting for 40 and it's coming in at 92, you can see real quickly where some of that has come. But that has been important to us. And it's one thing that we felt like we have done right, in the fact that we kept our staff. We knew that we needed to keep our staff working. It was only the right thing for them. And we knew at any moment that the governor was going to say, go back. We needed that infrastructure to stay in place. We couldn't turn on a dime and come back without having the employees there to support us. So even though it's money that's been spent, it's money that's been well spent for many different reasons. The one area that we could work on, and that we did from the very beginning, is we knew if our salaries were here, we had to take really good control of our food costs. We took some of our managers and we built our own transportation and department, and they went from school to school. We gathered food, we brought it in, we ate off our pantries for the first part of the pandemic. Literally, we used any and everything that was left in the school. There were many items that did not meet the idea of what a meal should be during the pandemic. And so that would be our chips, our cookies, those things that were extra. We gave them to our community. Nothing went to waste. It was all still given to the community, even though there was no funds coming back into that. But we did use everything that we had. Luckily, our school system had always still scratch cooked. So we were able to get creative, utilize things, and nothing went to waste. Our USDA commodities have been our best friend. And I have told Gary Gay from the North Carolina Department of Agriculture that over and over. We've taken in what other school systems haven't used. We've constantly used those commodity dollars. We were able to get our food costs where we were normally in June of 2019, about a 38 to 40% food cost, which was in line with where we should be. We have been able to get our food costs down to 29%. We do not buy anything that we do not have to buy. We try to do things from our commodities, and we look at it from that measure, trying to control that cost to offset the labor. In this process, we have lost a couple of vendors. We've had a couple of contracts that have been broken because we were unable to meet sales quotas, and they just could not afford to deliver to us anymore for the small amount of monies we were doing. But we then again turned to our commodities. We're able to roll some of those funds into the Department of Defense, and have been able to get fresh produce for our school system by using the Department of Defense and those commodity dollars to provide fresh fruits and vegetables to our students. So that's a real picture of what's been going on. So now we got to look forward. One of the things that we need to look forward about is, again, the waivers. The government has only extended free meals to all students through September. We have to make that decision again. I'm hoping they'll do a better job this year, and that they will go ahead and ask for these free meals to go through the next school year. But if they don't, we have to decide, do we take the free meals through September, and then in September come back and tell parents they have to start paying? Or do we go ahead and start our school year saying we're back to regular, everybody starts to pay? So that's one thing we have to look at. One of the things that we worry about this is, if we start with free meals, not knowing if they'll go through the year, will our parents fill out free and reduced lunch applications? If they do not fill out free and reduced lunch applications, then that means we get 26 cents per every meal from the government, and that would be all the money we're taking in, even though those students would continue to eat, which means the debt runs up. And by federal law, school nutrition cannot incur that debt. The debt would have to be paid for by the school system. So those are things we need to start thinking about. The other thing is, last year we received a waiver for the community eligibility provision, which meant that we have 8 schools in this district who are allowed to have free meals every day for all students. We've known, looking back when you sign on to that, if you make no changes, you're locked in for 5 years. We've known for the last 3 years that if we go by the current numbers, which this is basically on direct cert food stamps or SNAP, as it's now called, that those numbers have been going down in this county. When we looked at it this month, because this is when we turn in our numbers and our 5 years is up, we will only have 2 schools eligible to continue on this program. So that means 6 of our schools would be coming off of the CEP status. And again, we're going to have that same issue. These parents have been eating free for 5 years. Now we've got to get them back to filling out for a reduced lunch applications. So debt will be incurred. Other counties who've gone through this have told us that the debts go up. So we want to be aware of this that's coming forward for this year as well. When we were estimating last year's school debt before we left, we had thought that our debt would probably be around $400,000. So we're not exactly for sure where we think either 2 of these issues would put us if we are not allowed to continue with free meals. Another issue is equipment. During the pandemic, I've had several things that have gone that need to be replaced. We've taken out a couple ovens and have not been able to replace them. The school does still have ovens, just not at the capacity that they were. The one thing that we've done for a long time that we talk about is things were great when we were booming and we were building. One year we opened 6 schools. The moment we're opening 6 schools, who I am starts to worry, because I know that when we get to 10 years, that now I've got all these schools who all the equipment will start to break at the same time, and how would I always cover that out of my budget, because there isn't any money for school nutrition equipment. So we've already reached that point. There's not really money in our budget to be able to cover things, and that is a big concern for me. We had a principal last week start asking us for chairs because the chairs in his school were broken. Typically, cafeteria furniture was purchased from school nutrition. That changed probably when we started the big build, and we used to have a really great fund balance. They moved the cafeteria furnishings over to our department. We had to try to explain to this principal that we do not have the money to be able to replace his chairs at a time. And sometimes I don't think they, in retrospect, realize what that means. But to sort of give you a little example, we would have to sell 300 cookies to be able to pay for a $90 chair. It would take about 300 cookies to build up enough profit to be able to buy that one chair. So if that can sort of put some things into perspective for you. Other concerns that we need to look at are scheduling of lunches and scheduling of days of where students come to school, but yet they're or on virtual, and those will be days that we will not be bringing in revenue for school nutrition. Those are sort of my concerns, looking forward at a little bit of a glimpse of what we've been through for the last year. And now I'm open for questions, but I do have one more fact that I found out yesterday, because I've been waiting. It took us a while to figure out how many kids were actually in the building for the day. That's not something we have recorded this way in the past, and we finally found a report that lets us know that. So it looks like for the month of February and some of the surrounding months, that out of the students who are in the building, we are feeding 65 to 70% of them free. I was really excited about that. So we are doing a good job of capturing the students who are in the building. Last year, and that's for lunch. If you looked at lunch in February, we would be capturing about 47% of those, 40 to 47% of those kids that would eat lunch. Again, thinking high school and middle schools eat a lot of a la carte and don't buy a complete lunch. So I'm really pleased that we are able to reach that many of our kids, and that many of our kids are taking part in the program.
Denise, I want to add quickly, just emphasize a couple of quick things. So going back to the CEP, one of the things we noticed from the CEP schools, as students migrated from those CEP schools up to middle schools, they've been used to getting free meals, and we saw our unpaid meal balances go up at the middle schools from those students that came from the other schools, and that's been a concern. And then the other thing she touched on, which is really of concern, is the free and reduced meal applications are not coming in. In fact, later this morning, I'm talking to Hanover Research about some efforts we can utilize to make that better. But as we get to this cliff of those free meals stopping, the concern is that kids are still going to come through the line and they're still going to expect that. And we are really concerned about that. Our unpaid meal balance has the potential to just spiral out of control. And it's a real concern, and we appreciate the opportunity to share these concerns and information with you all.
Thank you. Mr. Price, you had a question?
First, I'd like to say, Denise, very good job. Very nice presentation.
Very nice.
You had mentioned we're down 40 people. Are we still down 40? And I guess where I'm going is, we're getting ready to open these schools up 5 days. Do we need those people back, or are we hiring people back with that anticipation?
We have been trying to hire the whole entire school year. I did a real push in January, trying to at least get our full-time employees on. What ended up happening is my part-time people took those jobs. And so it just shifted the
need.
spots
The
over
need,
to
yeah.
part-time. So we continue, we've advertised, we're on not LinkedIn, but Indeed, we're out there doing that. There's just not a lot of interest. If you drive around and look at all the restaurants, you can see we need help. I even noticed construction companies going down Monroe High, everywhere are saying we need help. People are not coming to apply for jobs, even though unemployment is very high. But we're working on it. We have partnered with the buses. We did a orientation. We have about 15 or 20 bus drivers who said that they would come and help us fill in. So that may mean that I have to take 3 bus drivers to cover the position of one employee. Since they can only work about an hour and a half or 2 hours, we don't want to get too much overtime going. So I may have to have one come in at 9:30 and then somebody overlap to try to fill some positions. We are going to be looking at that later this afternoon, where those hoses are that we weren't able to move. And I will say, I did not move every employee back. The middle schools and high schools, I had a guess where we're going to be. I took the AB in the A day and the B day, and I added the number of kids together and said, this is who's been coming to school all year. This is who's been eating with us. This is where we're going to start. So we have only staffed our middle schools and high schools up to the numbers of the kids who have actually been eating. So we may need more if more kids come back than what we anticipated, but we are, just like the bus drivers have been, we're hurrying to find people to fill these positions.
Do you feel like we have adequate food supply to get us to the end of the year? I know that was a concern at one point, is actually getting food to our kids, or get it, to the school.
Since we did have until after spring break to prepare our, all our vendors are up, they're ready, they know our orders are coming. We'll have those in before we leave for spring break. Actually, that delivery will already be here before we leave. So they're aware that we're going to be increasing our food, and they have started their buying process. Luckily, we had those weeks because they purchase about 4 weeks out themselves to stock their warehouses. We may have a few items here or there, but we'll find something else to plug into that hole. So I'm hoping we should be okay on that point.
Okay. One last
Thank
question.
you.
I guess this is probably more directed towards Mark. And it's maybe off base for finance, but what are we doing for planning our lunch schedules in our schools? I'm getting some questions from parents, and is that something you're talking with principals? Are we going to add period? Are we eating in class? Are we eating in lunchrooms? How's that looking?
All of the above. So a couple things. Denise did not mention this, but the toolkit has not helped us. We've not been able to continue self-service. So essentially everything that we do, we kind of have to handle ourselves. So that has made us more inefficient. In terms of meal times, we have said for many weeks now, and we'll do so later today at another meeting, we've got to have help from our schools on how the meal time takes place. And what we've said to them and what we've asked them to do is that they need to bring classes in every 3, 4, 5 minutes. The best way for us to be efficient with fewer resources in terms of labor is that once we start serving food, we need to keep serving the entire time. We need to be continuous with that. So we don't need a 15-minute break in between meal service. We also don't need a whole class of sixth graders coming to the cafeteria at one time.
But
We
that's
need
how
to-
they do it in elementary school, right? Every 3
correct.
minutes, there's another class coming in there. Why can't we use that elementary?
So high school and middle school schedules are set up a little differently, and
But
we
they're still by
understand.
classes, so.
That's right. But we have asked them to please help us with that. And so we have tried to address that with them. And if they will help us with that, we can get through it with the labor that we have.
Okay, so the elementary model works
Right.
because it comes every 3 minutes or whatever it is. Okay, I have a finance question. So, oh, sorry, Mr. Reverend Benson, you can go first.
No, go ahead, Madam Chair, and then I'll
No,
come
no,
after
no,
you.
please, I'm sorry, you first.
All right, Ms. Denise, excellent presentation. While you were talking, one of the things that I thought about was, back when I was at Monroe High School, we had a school store. And so when you was talking about those numbers, though it's not on the same scale, I was feeling you. I was feeling your pain. I know what it is to have to stock and buy and all that kind of stuff. But when schools are fully in, pre-COVID, pre this chaos, how much revenue was generated from sales outside of like just the lunch, but sales, those ancillary items, that folks would buy? What percentage of revenue was generated from that activity?
It's somewhere between 18 and 20% of our budget is what we have for supplemental sales. And that would be around somewhere between 3 and 4 million.
So the mere fact that we are getting our awesome students back into the schools, that in itself, not in maybe the most hugest way from what you were saying, but it would be a helpful to have those supplementals go up, because if they're there, they're going to buy, and I know that. So that would be one form of help, just getting the children back in school full time, correct?
Yes, our supplemental sales have not been at the same percentage that they had been at, but it will help. What we will try to put out as much as we can handle, again, with the labor, and because of the type of service we're having to do, it limits how much we can have out, because every meal has to be billed and has to be handed to the students. So we will gain a little bit, but it's not going to be enough of a push to help us get very much recovery, just because we're so limited to being able to even display it to show the kids.
I appreciate that. Just knowing that some help without us doing anything outside of just getting the kids back, that's something. That's something to the pot. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks. So from a finance perspective, we've been using our COVID funds to help school nutrition service, and we're going to continue doing that, correct?
As much as we can. The original funds had a lot more flexibility. The money that we spent at the end for the end of June allowed us to be able to do more support for school nutrition. I'm hopeful. There's been some discussion, but I have not seen anything. Denise and I talked about this yesterday. I've not seen anything concrete about additional support for school nutrition, because this is not unique to Union County. This is something that's going on across the state.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say too. This isn't unique.
No, but I would say because of some of our free and reduced and some of the unique things we have going on here, we may experience a higher, some of what we experience might be a little bit different. In conversation with her, the main purpose for having some of this discussion now is the fact that, we've talked a lot in the past about maybe having to address some of the things Denise mentioned about the debt for student lunches.
Mm-hmm.
This different conversation. This right
Right.
now for this year, we're talking about having to support the program.
I
And
agree. Yes.
I wanted to at least put the number out there. She's going to work through this, but we might be talking more than $1 million that would need to be injected into this program from local funds if we have no other source to help sustain this program through this year, because she can't have a loss.
Right.
She talked a lot about how many months of operating she has. So once she gets below 1 month of operating, there's no indirect cost and other things. Now, these federal dollars have indirect cost, the ability to charge indirect costs. So there will be some balance in that loss. But again, for her to recover from that, once I think the main point is once
That's my question. Yes.
full nutrition in this way, once it starts, her ability or the program's ability to make that up, we're going to have to continue that support for quite some time. So it will now become a budget line
that's what I thought,
greater than we've ever had.
So when we build this next year's fiscal 22 budget, we're going to have to take a look at that as well. But so even if we went back to school as normal next year, it would still take years to bring up her fund balance so that she would be able to do that.
Correct.
And then
and
I guess
her cash flow will be another thing that we will need to help support.
Yep.
Normally her program doesn't start seeing enough cash to cover her expenses until sometime in December, January, or February.
Right.
So we will assist with that that's not going to be an issue, but that just is
don't
something
want her to worry about all this all the time. So my other question is until that fund balance goes back up, does facilities need to talk about the cafeteria? I'm sorry, the dog is bothering me. Do we need to talk about chairs and tables for cafeteria until we get, it could be years before
we can work through some of that as well.
Okay.
We have some furniture lines that normally are included.
Yes, we do, that never get used. Right. Yep.
Right. So we always make sure we utilize them and address the needs, so we can definitely evaluate that.
Okay.
I think the bigger concern with that is the more big ticket items, like the things that are aging out. And
yes, the equipment
as we get to.
Yeah, the equipment's the biggest issue.
Yeah, their equipment is quite expensive.
When we renovate, so we have a couple on the CIP renovations of kitchens. Do we include new equipment in there when we do that? I assume we do, but maybe that's a bad assumption.
So for a brand new school, we typically include it.
Not a brand new school, a renovation.
And so for renovations, depending on the budget, we'll buy as much as we can.
Okay. So maybe we need to look at that in our CIP as well, just to make sure that we're getting what we need over the next few years before we can see some daylight on your budget. So
I was going to say that's all we have for.
Well, Mr. Reverend, Reverend Benson.
Yeah, this is for Mr. Mark. What are you already beginning the process of informing the parent community about the fact that we got to get away from so much of the reduced and free, and that to help them get ready to fill out those forms? Are you getting that information out?
So we did something maybe a year or so ago. We started the transition from paper forms to online forms. Part of that, it's more efficient for us. The other thing is you get rid of the stigma of someone having to take a form and bring it back and hand it in. They can just do it online. So we're working on our processes now of how to increase the number of free and reduced forms that we get. But again, with everything that's going on in the country right now, there is some hesitancy on some people to fill out the forms. So we're working on strategies to try and increase that. It seems like it's gone down in the last 3 years, just a steady decline.
Well, I appreciate that, but I'm listening to you and your heart as it relates to getting the parents ready for the shift. So are we
Yes.
having, in a sense, an advertising campaign to the parents to say, there's going to come a time when we won't be able to sustain everybody free, and those that can pay need to start paying? Are we beginning to build that bridge to the community? Because, you know, a lot of parents have no problem, obviously, paying. And then there's some parents and there's some families that need all the help they can get. Those are the ones we really want to help. But those that can pay, we all say, like, everybody needed help during this COVID. Everybody needed some form of relief. Well, it seems like, listening to Ms. Denise's, report, we've been providing relief in that area for a very long time. And so at this point, to the point now where she's here saying, I need some help. So what can we do to help her
Yep.
by providing to the parents notification that the time is coming when we're only going to be able to truly help the needy, and the benefit of everybody is coming to an end? Are we preparing that type of information? Because the quicker we can get that
Communication is what
information
you're
out,
asking. Yeah,
right?
communication.
We've had
The
those
quicker we can get
conversations.
it out, the easier it'll be for them. Because if it
Yep.
comes at a close time, they rightfully have a complaint. But if we give enough information or enough time to communicate, as our chair has eloquently said, then I think that they can build to that.
We've had those conversations internally. Keep in mind that it's March and those free and reduced meals will continue at least through the summer. So we're working on it internally and strategizing about where we need to go and how we should communicate it. Yes, we are working on it.
So we are planning on doing using the waiver through the summer for free lunches for everybody, correct? Is that what I heard? Okay, that's what I heard. So then it would be turning the switch on August 23rd when we go back into school. So communication is huge. So I agree with you, Reverend Benson. Does anyone have anything else? Thank
I
you
just
so
wanna-
much. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to say, Denise, I echo what Mr. Price, Reverend Benson, and Ms. Heintel said. Thank you so much for your leadership and to your staff for your hard work. I think what you and your team have done since March is a great example of what we all believe, many of our employees have done in terms of putting kids first. And you've done that. You've put our families first. And based on this conversation and the work we're doing, I know we're all here to support you and your team efforts. But I just wanted to say thank you for what you're doing and thank you for your leadership. We very much appreciate it.
I was going to say the same thing. He took it. It's okay. Thank you. And thank you for joining us anytime. The next thing, I just have one quick question for Mrs. Lamar. You're good. I have a quick question. One of our board members in an email asked about a true up when we talked about it. It was talked about at the joint meeting. So I just wanted to circle back to that quickly. Shauna, I know that last year for fiscal 20, we got our true up money early. I think in March of 2020, we got about 1.238 million. When we had our joint meeting in February of 2020, we talked about the true up being much less than what it had been in the past. And we were told that as you get into the 99.5, 6, 7, because it's based on, the true up is based upon, they use a number of people, of the percentage of people who will pay their property taxes. And if it comes in more than that, that is what the true up is. But when you get into those high percentages, it's less and less money is what they were explaining to us. So this year, for fiscal 2021, are we expecting any sort, they told us that it would continue to go down from there as we get in the 99.7 payment numbers, percentage payments. So where are we with that this year?
This year, we're not anticipating any true up funds. We did talk with the county staff about that. They are really trying to shift the model on how they fund schools back to what we were originally, how we had normally done things, where you submit your request and it's not necessarily based on a percentage of a penny. That they really are looking to try to fund the needs of the district. There will be, I'm sure, some percentage of, from one year to the next, they're using some formulas, but they really want to see what they can do to help us, as opposed to holding to such a specific dollar amount. So in doing that, their intention is to fund us based on how we request our money, what needs we have, and that was the reason that when we talked about it, they just said that the dollar amount this year would have been just very small anyway. They've gotten better and better at how they've allocated funds, and so they really just want to address our needs, as opposed to just giving those dollars based on that penny.
Okay. Okay, anything else? Committee members? Okay, our next meeting is April 27th, but before that, we're going to be having a budget work session with the board the 19th, so look out for that email. And I think that's it. I need a motion to adjourn.
Madam Chair, before we get that motion, Sana, I look forward to seeing you at 1.
Oh, that's right. You guys have your meeting at 1. Yep. Okay.
All right, motion to adjourn.
Thank you.